If you're new to wood turning, figuring out what grind to use in your bowl gouge can be confusing. In today's video, I'm going to talk about each one, how to sharpen them, and when to use them. I'm Nick, and welcome to my shop. If you're new here, I'm a wood turner. I make things round and smaller using the lathe. Today I'm talking about bowl gouges. These are primarily used to turn bowls, but you can actually use them for spindle work, faces, hollowing, everything. What makes them unique is they have a lot of steel for a lot of overhang, so you can get deep into things. But the one thing is, there's different ways to grind these tools up. Today I'm going to be covering the three most common, which is traditional grind, the Irish grind, and the 40/40. In case you're wondering why I'm wearing an apron today and not a smock, well, my zipper broke on the smock, so gotta use the backup. So let's talk about bowl gouges and what makes them special. So traditionally, when you do spindle work, you use a spindle turning gouge, which is this guy. And if you look, it is just a very shallow flute, and you have a fingernail grind on this one. Compared to, it's a good example, this is a bowl gouge. It has a much deeper flute. And the reason why it's deeper is this extra steel here allows you to overhang on the tool rest. You can go out further and it doesn't have vibration, it won't bend. This is pretty strong stuff, but sometimes you need more when you start getting like 4 inches overhanging from the tool rest. And from there, the shape can vary. So this one here, actually it's a good example here, is a parabolic flute. If you look real close, it's parabolic shape versus a U-shaped one here. I know there's another type out there that's V-shaped. I actually don't have one in the shop. Don't really see them too often. Mainly what you get is the parabolic. And why does that matter? Well, for these Irish grinds here in my hand, doesn't matter too much. But when you go to the 40/40 or the bottom bowl gouge, it actually won't clear the chips. Everything just gets packed up in the flute. So the parabolic is definitely the way to go. The other thing to note is what the steel is made out of matters. The Robert Sorsby uses what's called M2 tool steel. And this is like some space age stuff with like palladium and all kinds of cool stuff in it. But it's not the best on the market. You have what's called M2 cryo, which is cryogenically frozen, which are cryogenically treated. And these have like some better crystals in the steel, which actually makes them harder. The M2 cryo, you have to sharpen about half as much as you do with the M2 steel. Then you also have what's known as M4 steel, which is a different hardness and formulation, still space age. And there's trade-offs to that. I actually don't have any of that in the shop. But there's a new type on the market that's a blend of both called M42. And the M42 tool steel is a little harder to get, a little more expensive, but this stuff, you don't really sharpen much at all. I kind of forget. This stuff's amazing. So tool steel matters. I could do a whole video on that, on just formulations, but basically M2 cryo, M42 is like the better stuff you can get. The Robert Sorsby running the M2 tool steel is still great. So I talked about the steel formulation and the flutes. Let's talk about the grinds that you put on it and use yourself. Whenever you buy these tools, sometimes they'll come with the traditional, sometimes they come with an Irish, really depends. But let's start with the Irish grind, the one that I see the most common. It's also known as the Ellsworth grind. There's a slight variation between the two, and I'll cover that. But generally speaking, it is an angle here at the tip that's about 55 to 65 degrees. Most people recommend a 60 degree. Yeah, so measuring it myself here, I ran at about 56 degrees. And that's basically just pure preference. Some people like a little bit steeper, some people like a little bit less. Doesn't really matter. Just as long as what you enjoy and what you like using is what you have. This part here is typically ground about twice as long as the width of the tool. And that's how you get that nice fingernail grind. And to get this fingernail grind, you require this sharpening jig. And I'll show you how to use this. This is known as the Varigrind sharpening jig. There's a few others out there, different brands, but this is the one I recommend for people. Now, what's really nice about this tool is you end up with a 60-degree here at the front, and then as you rotate the tool, the angle varies. So this is a variable angle tool. If it's not cutting quite right, just turn a little bit, and you have that better angle. Up next is the 40/40 grind, recommended by Stuart Batty. If you've not heard of him, he's a production woodturner out of England. And if you look, it's a lot more stubby of a tool. The angle here is 40 degrees. And whenever you sharpen it, the side angle should also be 40 degrees. And that means this tool, no matter where you position it, is going to be 40 degrees. And 40 degrees is kind of a number we see across woodworking. Supposedly my hand planes are at that angle and a few other things. But the downside is it makes it one angle. It's only 40 degrees versus something that's variable like the Irish grind. Now, the other one that I've become to love is a traditional grind. The traditional grind is typically 60 degrees. And it's a very stubby tool. You kind of just rotate it as you sharpen it. And I'll show you that in a second. And this works well for the U shape and the V shape and also parabolic. But I've kind of grown to love this because it just works. You just pick it up, it cuts well, it's fun to use. So I'm not going to give it my Irish grind, but I'm still a big fan of this one. It's probably my number 2. And again, this is all personal preference. So let's get to sharpening. So this is my sharpener. I'd highly recommend a low speed bench grinder versus high speed, just because you don't heat the tool up as much. And on one side here, I have a CBN wheel. The other side is I have that white metal oxide wheel that actually came with the unit. I think this one's like 120 grit. Don't quite remember. But the one over here, this is a 600 grit. You can get different grit wheels, and basically the higher the grit, the less you take off when you sharpen. And I'm going to start with the Irish grind. So you need a spacer for the Varigrind system. So when you put this on, just get this tight so I can still move it. But the amount you want to have hanging out typically is 2 inches. Now I have a jig for this, which is this little hole just turned into or drilled into a piece of oak, and it works great. And that means if I measure the tip of that, it's at 2 inches hanging out. You crank it down. So now this is set up. You use the pocket. When you buy these grinding systems, you end up with a pocket thing like this that slides into a channel, and well, not that. End up with one of these flat platforms. So the angle of your tool right here in that front nose is set by how far in and out this thing is. So the easiest way to get this set right is if this angle is correct, which I marked it, kind of pull it out, bring it until you eyeball it, tighten it down. Just turn by hand. And if you see, there is a streak of silver right down the middle. I got it spot on the first try. Sometimes you have to play with the distance here, pulling it in and out. What I do is actually have these setup blocks that I just pop in, set the distance for me, and I'm good to go. Now, I'm lucky with the CBN wheel, the diameter doesn't change, versus this guy, as you sharpen it, this guy gets smaller. So you'd have to do the Sharpie trick to set this up every time. Then hit the sides. You roll it over, and you should be good. I still have some black, so you can do a little bit more. So the reason why you do the wings and then you go from one side to the other is you're gonna make the nose like more blunt. Ooh, ow, hot. Make the nose really blunt because you'll grind away a lot faster on the nose and the sides. And to initially set this up, use your platform, set that angle, and then come over here and start grinding the sides and working it. Now this is a good time to talk about the difference between an Irish grind and an Ellsworth grind. Basically, all of this is the same, it's just how you grind these wings. So if you look real close at my tool, for the Ellsworth grind, it comes out like this, goes up at that angle, and then this part kind of like curves down, like that. And that's the Ellsworth. The Irish grind, the tip is more like that. And the main difference that gives you, so you can use this part of the tool here to cut wood. And I'll show that a little later on. And the only way you get that shape versus that shape is how you grind these wings. And that's just grinding on the side. Next up is the Stewart Batty 40/40 grind. This one here takes a little bit of finesse to grind, but don't be discouraged. It's actually pretty easy once you get the hang of it. So you need to use the platform. And what this is actually the Rubo rest, which they stopped making, and I absolutely love it. It makes setting this so easy. To set up my platform, I use the Stewart Batty angle gauge. And this thing's absolutely fantastic. It has mainly all the angles you want. And just kind of hold it. There we go. That's set to 40 degrees because this face here slides right up. I know some people will scribe lines directly on their plate, which I actually have some on here, but they're just hard to see. And the goal is so that's 40 degrees on each side. And the way this is sharpened, it's a weird movement. Hold it down flat. Yeah, I need to be standing off the side for this to work for me. And you just kind of sweep it. So start on one side at 40, bring it all the way down, go over to 40 on the other. And this takes practice. And there we go. Have a freshly ground 40/40. And if you want to make a tool like this for 40/40, make sure it's parabolic. Then grind 40, and then blend it together. And last up is the traditional grind. So I'm taking my setup here, and I'm going to go to 60 degrees. And this one is very basic. Hold it flat. And that's it. It's sharp. The other thing I like to do is cut back these wings up here. And that just makes it so that like this can't, up here, can't just catch as you're turning. Let's get this bowl in the lathe and I'll show you how those tools work. Okay, so I'm going to get this 10-in flat and I'm going to use the 40/40 grind here. All I'm going to do, start cutting and do a pull cut. And that gets this nice and flat. Grabbing an Irish grind here, I can do the same thing. And honestly, with the 40/40 and the Irish, both work the same there. And the question you're probably asking is, can you do that with the traditional? And the answer is, I don't know. I've actually never done it with the traditional. So let's find out. Oh. The answer is you can, but these wings up here, they get in the way. So, probably just gonna do a push cut here. So let's cut this tenon, and for that I typically use my spindle gouge, but this 40/40 grind is actually perfect for it because of the angle on it. So I'm going to use that. And that is a beautifully cut tenon. I have to say, this 40/40 does come in handy. Now, this bowl is twice turned, so it's a little bit out of round, but I don't have to rough out a lot of it. And I could use any of the tools for that. But for this, I'm going to use the 40/40. Just got to hold it down and float the bevel. This tool doesn't like the bevel to be rubbed, or else you get the wood actually pushes back and you get this rippling effect. So hold it down and then just go across and you should get a beautiful finish. And the problem I'm ending up actually is I can't get it started because it is in the way back here. Because I'm using tailstock support, the tailstock back here won't let me get to the end and actually make a complete cut. So I'm going to start out here. This thing is actually cutting really well. I have a little bit of tear out right here. Don't know if the camera picks that up. But you're just going to get that with every bowl gouge. And you just have to use scrapers and sandpaper to get rid of that. Now, same cut, different tool. We've got the Ellsworth grind on the bowl gouge. And this here, set it up the same way. Start rubbing the bevel. Probably want to float it just to get a little bit better cut. And you just follow the edge of the bowl. Now I'm getting that tapping noise, and I think it's, yeah, right here. I have a crack that I filled with CA glue. That's causing some issue. But this cut is almost as clean. I'm getting still tear out in the same spot over here. I think the 40/40 on this bowl actually is getting less tear out. There's one more tool to try. That's the traditional. So let's make the same cut with the traditional grind. This one's a little bit harder to control, so I'm getting a lot more tool marks, but the cut is really good. I have still tear out. But yeah, that's a great finish off this tool. And the one thing you notice is I was able to start all the way back here because this angle is at 60 degrees. Versus the 40-40, I can't get the tool in there because the tailstock's in the way. And that's what the big advantage is, one over the other, that I found is different angle of the tool. Some parts of the lathe don't get in the way. I have to say, this traditional grind, I just have this one strip of tear out. This traditional grind is working the best for this bowl. And I do have to say, that's not normal. I've seen bowls, depends on the wood, depends on the grain. Sometimes it likes one tool more than the other. That's why I have multiple. But today, it's like in the traditional. So at this point, we need to get this outside ready for sanding. And I got tool marks in here. I still have tear out. There's multiple ways to do that. One way is I grab a scraper. This is a Hope Woodturning tool negative rake scraper. This tool, swirl at the edge, go back and forth. And what I'm getting is this fine, like, shaving coming off, and that's what I want to see. This is looking great. But let's say you don't have a negative rake scraper, but you do have the Ellsworth grind. Because this is beveled out like that, I can actually do a shear scrape like this coming down. So let me show you. I hold the tool upright, probably at, I don't know, 10 or 11 o'clock position. I'm going to cut in the bowl using this part of the tool right here. Hold it up, almost closed, and just scrape it across. And I'm hitting the tool rest so I can't get all the way down, but that's actually a better finish than I'm getting with my scraper. And I'm getting this really, really fine, like, shavings versus the bigger stuff I was getting here with my negative rake scraper. But yeah, this is ready for like 220 sanding on the outside. And that's why I love the Ellsworth grind. I can do the big cut here, take a lot away, then I can go and do a shear scrape back and make it ready for sanding versus something like the traditional or the 40-40. You can only do that cut going across, and for the fine work, you need a scraper to help clean stuff up. And yes, I was just using another bowl as the jam chuck. Okay, let's talk about turning the inside of the bowl. This one's already hollowed out because it is a twice turn bowl that I grabbed. But to do the hollowing, you can scoop it out, or you can do the pull cuts. You already saw how to do a pull cut, and I'll do that on the edge to get this cleaned up. And I just bring that at a 10 o'clock position, so it's slightly open, and pull it across. That edge doesn't look too bad on this bowl. Probably should get rid of a little bit. Okay, let me see if I can show you exactly what I'm doing here with the pull cut. Set the tool like this. I'm using this part right up here. Using this part of the tool. And I'm going to just pull right across. Okay, let's talk about hollowing out a bowl. And start with the Irish grind. Basically all you're doing is coming in and scooping out the bowl, gonna ride the bevel, and you go on through. So you get started vertically. Light's in the way, thank you. So this bowl is, or was at around, now it's round again. So I'd do a few passes, but you can see I started getting some bouncing, and that's because I'm pushing on the bevel and the wood's pushing back. But for this, like I said, just a scooping, and if you do it just right, everything's supported by the bevel, supported by the tool rest. I can actually take this hand away and do it one-handed. Get that oscillation there, that's why it's nice to have a second hand just to help with that. And there you can tell I'm routing the bevel, I'm not floating it, so I'm pushing the wood, it's pushing back. Now that same move can be done with the 40-40. Get started, open it up. That's a beautiful cut. Absolutely beautiful with this. And last but not least, the traditional grind. And that's a catch. That was still a good cut, but it was a little bit harder for me. And mainly, difference is the bevel angle, how it affects things. So, let's say I'm right here, and I'm cutting, so I'm cutting at this angle. But if you have the 40-40, your tool handle's out here, which you can't see. When you're on the 40-40, you're out here. So the handle position changes with the angle. And where that is important with deeper bowls. great example. So this is a cedar bowl that I have. And when you hollow it out using like when you're hollowing out using a traditional grind tool, I can get the tool in there and I can cut. But whenever you do like a 40/40, the rim of the bowl goes in, so I can't actually get this tool in. I think, yeah, it won't even hit the bottom. So this rim here gets in the way. And for that, you need a bottom bowl gouge, like this guy that I have. Would be in the bottom. This is the bottom bowl gouge with an 80-degree grind on it, and it'll cut at this angle. So it'll get to the bottom, no problem. Versus the 40/40, which, yeah, there's no way. I think now I'm at 40 degrees, and that's, past center. So that's where this tool, and even the Ellsworth grind, Irish grind, Ellsworth grind breaks down. It just doesn't have, I mean, it's better, but it's still not there. The traditional can get in there. It'll have issues getting to this back corner, but we'll be fine getting right in here. So this is actually like the traditional grind can be used as a bottom bowl gouge. So that about covers the turning on the inside. The bowl is still quite thick, so that's to finish this guy, thin it down a little bit more, but I'm not going to bore you with that. So there you have it. The difference between the 40/40, Irish grind, and traditional. They're all great tools. In all honesty, you should have 2 out of the 3 in your toolbox. Definitely a traditional one for at least the bottom bowl gouge, maybe even a steeper angle version. But for your main workhorse, having an Irish grind or 40/40 is great. I know I covered a lot of stuff here, and it was just skimming the surface. I mean, you can talk entirely about just one of these grinds for an entire video. And if you want that, let me know. Thanks for watching and have fun.